4. Rebellion. By 1997, Father had 6 wives and the house was bursting at the seams with children, so he arranged for our house to undergo a major renovation and expansion. Church members donated a lot of time and money to make this possible. When the construction was finished, there were 14 bedrooms and the new kitchen was enormous, with all new oak cabinets, a commercial stove, a walk-in refrigerator, and white tile flooring. There were custom-made oak tables with benches in the huge new dining room so that the whole family could eat together. Even the living room got a total makeover, with beautiful green carpet and cream curtains, and new couches. There was a lovely new piano too. I was so excited that our house was so beautiful after all those years of mismatched second-hand stuff. The work done on the outside made me sad though. The workers had torn out the trees we used to climb, the fruit trees we used to eat from, and the beautiful rose bushes I'd so loved. Now there was just the solid cement wall circling the property, with some newly planted small trees and shrubs. The woods, where we'd spent so much time as children, were no more. Father seemed to be paying more and more attention to how we girls were maturing. One evening we were sitting in the living room as a family after the youngest children were in bed. Becky stood up and said, "I'm going to go shower." A few minutes later she walked back through the living room, on the way to the bathroom with her clothing and shower items in her arms. As she passed the couch, she dropped her deodorant. "What is that?" Father said. "Bring it over here." Becky picked it up and brought it to Father. He turned it over in his hand, his brow furrowed. "Have I approved this? I don't remember approving you to use such things. I want you to come talk to me about this after you shower." Father was against anything that made us smell good. Perfume was a sin, created so that women could tempt men to be immoral with them, according to him. "Rachel, you can't comb your hair like that. It will make the boys look at you," Father said to me more than once the year I turned 13. I still braided it according to the rules of the church, but he didn't like how I did it in the front. He corrected me often about my appearance, but I was persistent in my disobedience. As our family grew, Father had less time to focus on me, and I was more and more determined to be a normal teenager, although I chose my battles carefully. Since Father could still deny me access to the few pleasures I had, such as playing with my sisters. But my hair was so crossing the line for Father that he actually expelled me from school for it, and I missed most of 7th grade. Father wanted me to continue my schoolwork at home without a teacher, but I refused. Instead, I spent a lot of time practicing my violin, playing basketball, or reading novels if I could sneak them. By then Father had forbidden Gentile books entirely, saying that we could only read priesthood books, which meant scripture. But every once in a while, one of us girls would get our hands on a Gentile book at school, or from one of our friends. That's when I learned the best place to read was the mud bathroom. The only place in the house it was okay to be behind a locked door. The only downside is that the toilet seat was really uncomfortable and cold, and sometimes I thought the ring around my butt would be permanent. I increasingly felt I couldn't trust anyone, and I was always angry. I didn't even get along with Becky, who had always been my go-to person when I wanted to share a confidence or get comfort. More and more, I resisted Father's efforts to be alone with me, even as they became more brazen. One morning before school, Father asked me to go outside to check the sprinklers with him. Standing in the yard, he grabbed my hand and put it in his pocket. I quickly realized there was a hole in the fabric as he pressed my hand around his penis, which was already hard. Father continued to hold my hand there as he walked around the yard, supposedly checking the sprinklers. A few of the younger children were playing in the yard. I knew they wouldn't notice or understand if they did. Still, I was embarrassed and ashamed. We walked around like this for what seemed like an eternity. I tried to pull my hand away several times, but he gripped it firmly to keep me there. "Well, it looks like these sprinklers are all working," Father said finally, and let go of my hand. I tried to avoid him for the next few days, but I knew I couldn't avoid him forever. In February 1997, I asked Father if I could get a dog. We had always had German Shepherds around, and I still missed Sunny, but the ones we had now were mostly guard dogs for the family. I wanted my own pet. "If you touch me right here," Father said, pointing to his crotch, "I'll get you a dog." I turned my back to him. Why is this the only way he will be kind to me? Will he ever stop doing this to me? I knew I would have to give in. He did get me the dog, and I loved it, but whenever I thought about what I'd had to do to get it, I shuddered. Mostly I continued to disobey Father when I could, so Father punished me by leaving me at home when he took my sisters on vacation or out to restaurants. The family looked at me in wonder. How does she dare disobey Father so much? I knew I could never tell them the reason. Father had been very clear on this point. If I told anyone, I would lose all hope of having anything good in my life. Common blessings like clothing and personal needs. If I wanted him to choose a good husband for me down the road, I knew I had to stay in his good graces. Father wrote me a letter that year, explaining that I needed to get in the habit of praying to Heavenly Father if I wanted good things in life. If the prayers didn't work, then something in my life wasn't right. He told me he loved me, and that he wanted me to be a good clean girl that will be useful to the prophet. And still, Father's abuse of me continued. The Lord wants us to move to Short Creek before the year 2000 to protect us from the coming destructions, Father announced in September 1998. For years we had been told the world would be destroyed in 2000, and only the righteous would survive. Father held this threat over our heads to make us obey him. I grew up believing I would die that year, because there was no possible way I could be good enough to be saved. Even something as minor as arguing with my sisters or complaining about chores meant I was doomed. But even the promise of salvation didn't mean I wanted to move to Short Creek. I hated the desert. Father's announcement came just a few weeks after Grandfather Rulon had a stroke that left him incapacitated. Grandfather was still the prophet, but Father started running the church from then on. Father would consult with Grandfather on decisions regarding the church and its members, but he wouldn't allow anyone else to speak to or see Grandfather. It was only through Father that we learned of the prophet's revelations. Father had been ordained to the office of First Counselor, to the president of the Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which basically made him the prophet's right-hand man. I knew that a person must be righteous to hold an office in the church. I wondered how God had let this happen. Short Creek straddles the border between Arizona and Utah, and is comprised of the twin cities of Colorado City, Arizona, and Hilldale, Utah. It's completely isolated, with massive cliffs to the north and the Grand Canyon to the south, so just one main highway goes through town. The FLDS church leadership liked that. It made it much easier to monitor who was coming and going. Short Creek had started as a small ranching community at the beginning of the 20th century, but Mormon fundamentalists started settling there in the 1920s, hoping to practice polygamy in peace. It didn't work out like that. In the 1950s, the governor of Arizona, John Howard Pyle, sent the National Guard into the community to stop the polygamy, which was a felony, according to state law. The guardsmen arrested the entire population of the town, including the children. Some children were kept away from their parents for as long as 2 years, and some were never returned at all. The governor made the mistake of inviting the press to witness the raid, and the sight of children playing in their yards being taken into custody did not make journalists sympathetic. Subsequently, the governor was voted out of office, and after that, the fundamentalist Mormon community was largely left alone. By the time Father told us we were to move to Short Creek ourselves, most FLDS followers were already living there. Becky and I thought Short Creekers were bummy and junky, and we swore not to be friends with them for fear we too would become weird. Becky complained that all that sand and red dirt meant we'd never have a neat day again too. In those last few days in Utah, we went on a lot of hikes, and took lots of pictures of our home and the mountains as keepsakes. It was autumn, and the leaves were making a showy display of red and orange and gold. "I'll never forget how beautiful it is here," I said to Becky one day, as we picked wild raspberries and sat in the tall grass. "Or how much fun we had," Becky said. It took all of September and October to pack up and get ready to move. By this time, Father's family numbered 31 members, with 7 mothers and 23 children all living under one roof. Most of the family left for Short Creek the last weekend in October. I wanted to stay in Salt Lake as long as possible, so I asked Father if I could go with the last ride. Father usually let me have what I wanted, like some kind of silent reinforcement for my keeping quiet. On a rainy November 1st, 1998, my sisters Becky and Marianne, Mother Barbara and I were the last of the family to leave Salt Lake Valley. Snow capped the tops of the mountains, showing the first sign of winter. It was so hard to say goodbye. "I don't think we can be as happy in Short Creek as we were here," I said as we started the drive south. "I know we can't," Becky said. "We'll make it fun," Marianne said in her usual enthusiastic way. Becky and I looked at each other and rolled our eyes. 3 days later I turned 15, a milestone I marked by baking my own birthday cake. Father gave both Becky, whose birthday was 2 months later, and me beautiful cedar hope chests. Inside were baby clothes and dishes, a hint of our impending futures as wives and mothers. Since Father's elevation to first counselor, our family now had some money, and Father spared no expense building us a huge new home in Short Creek. The house had 17 bedrooms, but with so many children now, doubling up was a luxury we no longer had. Sandra now shared a room with Becky and me. The enormous kitchen had a huge commercial stove, an industrial dishwasher, and 3 large refrigerators. There were now 3 long custom-made oak tables to accommodate the family at mealtimes, and 3 long couches in the living room. But it was Father's big green recliner that took center stage. The piano was situated by his chair so he could guide whoever was playing in the songs he wanted to hear. Music was very important to him, and we had a family sing every Sunday night, although it was limited to hymns and devotional music we composed ourselves. Outside, Father had the workers build a basketball court, and a sandbox with swings to keep the increasing numbers of children occupied. There was also a landscaped yard, and a fenced-in garden where we would grow fruits and vegetables. The property was connected to Grandfather Rouland's, with just a short path between our house and his. There was a trampoline in Grandfather's yard that we girls would jump on whenever we could. Father wouldn't allow us to have one of our own. I had stopped going to school after 8th grade, but the year we moved to Short Creek I began teaching 3rd grade at the church school, Jeff's Academy. My little sister Teresa was in my class. She had the most beautiful strawberry blonde hair and tiny nose with freckles splashed across it. I adored her, but I loved all my other students as well, and I liked to think that they loved me. All the teachers at the school were volunteers, so we received no pay. Father was still the principal, as he had been at Alta Academy, and still taught the morning class, but now he was also busy with church business, so math and the other classes he used to teach were now taught by someone else. Father was also busier at home. He took 10 new wives in 1999, which was a big adjustment for the whole family. Some of the new wives were as young as me, 16, yet Father's children were required to call all of his wives mother. Some of these new wives became our friends, and others chose to inhabit the role of mother to the fullest extent they were able. Jennifer and Joanna Steed married Father in October that year. Joanna was particularly naive, and Becky and I took every opportunity to tease her. We weren't mean, but we had our fun. 2 days after Joanna came to live with us, I went to her and said, "Father wants me to tend you today." "Really? Does he not trust me?" Joanna said. "I don't know. He just asked me to tend you today. We're supposed to watch over you, make sure you do good things and don't get in trouble." "Right, Becky? He's anxious that we keep a good eye on you," Becky said. "I don't plan on getting in trouble," Joanna said, a little disconcerted. "Don't worry, it's not that. He just has so many wives to keep track of," I said, trying not to giggle. Becky and I spent the day with Mother Joanna, taking her on walks, swinging on the swings, going to the grocery store. Every night after dinner, Father conducted family class with Grandfather's family up at Grandfather's house. At a little before the 8 p.m. start time, we corralled Mother Joanna to go with us to class. "Father's going to be so proud of you when he gets our report," Becky said as we walked along the path. The class lasted about 90 minutes. Afterward, Mother Joanna approached Father and said, "Warren, What do I need to do so that you will trust me enough to not get tended? Before father could say anything, I jumped in and said, she did really well. I think she won't need a tender tomorrow. I gave father a big smile. Father quickly caught the joke and burst out laughing. Joanna, did you really believe these girls were serious? Poor Joanna started crying and left the room, so Becky and I ran after her and apologized. I never thought you'd believe me, I said, but you went along with it so well, we didn't know what to do but keep pretending. I hope you forgive us. Joanna started to laugh. I guess that was stupid of me to believe you. Joanna's sister Jennifer was one of the new wives who took the job of mother seriously, but it was hard for me to obey someone who was only 2 years older than me. One day when I was playing piano in the living room, she came in and ordered me to go help make lunch. I ignored her and kept playing. I'm going to call father and tell him you're not at your duties, Jennifer said. I gave her a look that said, get lost. Next thing I knew, I was being summoned to father's office. When I got there, he asked why I was being disobedient to Mother Jennifer. She's basically my age. Why does she get to tell me what to do? Father sat quietly for a few minutes. This was new territory for him as well. I understand, but I need you to respect my wives as a part of me. Can you do that for me? That evening at family class, Father addressed his wives. I don't want any of my wives to treat my older daughters like children anymore. I want you to treat them as you would treat your sister wives. I was grateful to Father for saying that. The wives became a lot more respectful of us girls from then on, especially when he started taking ladies who were even younger than us. Father's attempts to be intimate with me grew less frequent as I got older and as he married more and more wives. It got to the point where I had almost convinced myself that he'd given it up. He had not. One evening, Father took a few of us girls to St. George for dinner. Our car had bench seats, and he had me sit next to him in front while he drove, and my sisters were in the back. It was dark by the time we made the return trip home. I was just watching the road, not thinking about much at all, when Father took my hand and placed it on his groin. I tried to pull away, but he wouldn't let go. I was afraid my sisters might see, so I didn't dare fight too hard for my hand. When we got home, I went straight to the bathroom and locked the door. I decided to take a long shower so Father wouldn't be able to get to me. Afterward, I went to Becky and said, let's go sleep in Mother Barbara's room tonight. We'd often slept on the floor or sofa in her room while we were growing up. I'll meet you there. I walked up to my mother's room and opened the door, only to witness Father and Mother having sex. Mother ran into her bathroom, and I ran back to my room. Becky, let's sleep in Mother Net's room instead. Hurry, I'll be there. A few minutes later, I was lying on Mother Annette's floor when Father came to the door. Rachel, are you okay? Do you want to come talk to me? No, I'm too tired, I said, and turned away from him to face the wall. I heard his footsteps as he walked away, and then heard him say, Lori, come talk to me. Lori was one of his younger wives. Several weeks later, Father announced to the family that both Mother Barbara and Mother Lori were pregnant and due on the same day. A wave of horror filled my heart. What if that had been me? I had a feeling that if I'd gone with Father that night, I could have been having a baby too. Father tried one more time. One night, in December 1999, Father called me on the house phone and said, Rachel, come talk to me in my room. I had that warning feeling, but it was late, and I was too tired to disobey him. I went to his room and knocked. Father opened the door, motioned for me to step inside, and shut the door. The room was dark. Father took a seat on his sofa. Come sit by me, he said. I sat down. He took my hand in his and caressed it gently. Then he put it on his boy. This time I didn't have to think about it. I was furious, and I was done with Father trying to hurt me. I quickly drew my hand back, got up, and walked out of the room, shutting the door behind me. I went to my room, where a few of my sisters were being wild and silly, but I was in no mood to join in. Instead, I picked up a notebook and searched our messy desk for a pen. I sat down to write Father a letter. I didn't know words like molest or sexual abuse, but I knew he would know full well what I was talking about. He would certainly understand when I wrote, "I hate you when you do those things to me." I folded the paper and slid it under Father's door that night, then lay awake in fear of what he would do to me. The next morning, I stayed in bed. I did not go to morning reading and prayer with the family. I found out later Father hadn't gone that morning either, which was extremely rare for him around 10:00. And Mother Millie came to me. "Father wants you in his office," she said, meaning his office up at Grandfather Rouland's house, where he conducted church business. My hands shook as I turned back the covers to get out of bed. Although I had eaten nothing since the night before, my stomach gurgled threateningly, as though I would vomit. Usually I would make haste when Father had requested my presence in his office. That day my veins seemed filled with molasses, my movements awkward as I brushed my teeth and washed my face. I peered at my reflection in the bathroom mirror while I fixed my braid. None of Father's children had ever confronted him like this. No one in the entire church had done so. My future had never been so uncertain. Walking up the path to Grandfather's house, I wondered what kind of father I would meet when I got there. The door to Father's office was open when I arrived. Father was sitting in his chair. I stepped in, closed the door behind me, and took a seat right across from him, my hands in my lap. I did not want him to see the tremors that still plagued them. Father looked at me in silence, a hurt showing in his eyes that I had never seen there before. I returned his gaze, undaunted. I was not going to offer comfort, if that was his expectation. We stayed like that for several minutes. Finally, Father's expression collapsed into one of shame and defeat. He dropped his gaze to the floor and took a deep breath. I could hear the catch in his throat. Then, slowly, Father slid from his chair and got down on his knees in front of me. He put his hands together, as though he was praying, and said in an almost ethereal soft voice, "Rachel, please forgive me. I beg you to forgive me." I swallowed hard to keep my emotions in check. I said nothing. "Rachel, I beg for your forgiveness. Please, please forgive me." Still, I held my tongue. The longer I did so, the more he begged. I began to feel embarrassed for him, not because he was prostrating himself before me, but because this display of humility seemed hypocritical and insincere. I wanted to get up and run out of the room. Even his apology made me feel unclean. "Yes, I forgive you," what else could I say? I had to stop this performance. It worked. Father went back to his chair. When he looked at me again, his face had regained its composure. There was no hint of shame there anymore. "Rachel, you are a good and clean girl," he said, "and I want you to know that my father put me in the position of first counselor. I did not. We can keep all this between you and me, okay?" "Okay," I said. In truth, I didn't want anyone to know what had transpired in that office. It felt shaming. Yet I felt a sense of relief when I left Father's office. I had a strong hope that the abuse was over and I was free.